systems perspective, yeah.
Million
Let,
people
let me let me let me nail down a term that we've used a couple times, which people, because they sound similar, might confuse, but they have very distinct semantic differences. You guys love to use the word prescriptive. The word prescriptive means to tell people how to do something, to create a process, which is a deep part of the culture of a lot of organizations. And then we have descriptive, or predictive is actually the word I'm thinking of. Predictive, which is a term which is also called the classical or waterfall. It's not the same thing. Those are two different concepts, just to create clarity there. And a while back, I had Americo Pinto in one of my podcasts, who's the new cheerleader for PMOs at PMI. Had his own organization that was swallowed by PMI, similar to your story, which we'll talk about a little bit later as well. And he had a great analogy, which I liked, when it came, because he has a similar approach to PMOs. He said the big problem with PMOs is this prescriptive approach that there's one size that fits all. And that's far from reality. There's different hierarchical PMOs, there's different functional PMOs, there's different styles, there's different flavors. And he loves to use the word prescription when it comes to medicine. He says, depending on your ailment, you need a different prescription. It's a prescription that you might have to follow to a certain extent, right? But not every patient is going to get the same prescription. Would you kind of say that that's an analogy that fits for your situation as well?
Yeah. Well, in a way.
The problem I have with it is it means there's a top-down directive from somebody to say, this is your prescription, this is the way you're going to do things.
It would sound like that, but Americo actually means it. Americo is very, very, very fluid with his concept of bottom up and top down. I think a lot of people don't realize how much of the success of an organization is determined bottom up. In those gray zones where there's no rules and no prescriptions, how the line makes, find solution to things, their own solution. And this is a form of way of working. I also wanted to kind of underline again what I love about your guys' message is that, to get away from this concept of prescriptive approach, this is dogma and this is the way you're going to do it. One of the things I realized many years ago is that no matter how many books you read, how much training you get, how many certifications you add to the end of your name until you don't even see your name anymore, none of that replaces intelligent application.
No, you got to know what you're doing. Yeah,
you can be a master of tools. But if you don't know when to use the tool or how to use the tool in a different context, or how to reach out, or how to work psychology when psychology is the key issue, and I think a lot of people who get certifications say, you know what, if I just I get one more certification and then I'm good, I'm made whole, and I'm like, no,
yeah. Get you the next jump.
Another can of worms.
Yeah.
So people often ask us, if you're not going to ask us, if it's so great, why isn't everybody doing it?
Yeah.
And, pre-PMI, during PMI, we struggled with the marketing, because when you tell people there's 2,000 practices in there, they're like, oh my God, I can't possibly learn that. I'd much rather use the 17-page Scrum guide. Thank you very much. And by the way, it gives me freedom to fail. I can fail fast and not get punished. So
I can fail hidden.
No accountability. That sounds like, much more interesting than Disciplined Agile with governance and all that crazy stuff. We're making it sound more complicated and harder than it really is. Yes, you should have minimal yet sufficient governance, which often in many cases very little governance, depending on the situation. But it's not hard to use. What I think we failed to point out is that it's a reference toolkit. It's a reference library. It's not a playbook. It's not you have to do 2,000 things. It's, oh, gee, I'm struggling with requirements. Stories ain't doing it. My users really aren't articulating what they want properly in stories. We build to the story, we test to the story, yet they're still unhappy. I'm missing something. So a coach, team lead, scrum master, whatever, says, let's look at the toolkit, see what it has to say. Opens up explore scope. And in there I find 15 different ways to do requirements. some pictorial, visual diagrams, some textual. I'll pick one of these and one of those. Let's try a sprint, see if that improves the communication with our business. Oh, and then by the way, put the toolkit, it's not don't use a book anymore, use the internet, but anecdotally put it back on the shelf and get back to work. That's how hard.
You're jumping ahead, but I'm letting you go because I'm with you. I'm not an expert in it. I've had an insight into it. And also, when I was talking to Joshua, my head was spinning when he was showing me all the mind maps, and I'm like, oh my God. I mean, my first impression was, a lot of it when my eyes zoned in and I read the tools, I could recognize, I'd probably say like 60-70% of the methodology. So it was, I was kind of like intuitively putting it together. But my degree is originally in product management and in marketing. And the first thing I said, I'm an old academic geek. So I'm one of those, I love to read books and I love to learn as much, across the board. But from one thing that was kind of prevalent in my mind when I was listening to him, I said, if I was the marketing manager for this product, I was trying to break, how would I market this? Because quite honestly, I think what Agile does at a junior level and Disciplined Agile does at a high, PhD or master's level is acknowledge the fact that if you're talking about solving problems that are complex, there's a lot of bells and whistles that you have to be familiar with. You have to be able, and it's difficult to crunch it. And you know what? It's not something that I can do in the elevator with an elevator pitch. I might get your attention, but you're not going to understand. And I think this is what you were addressing, Mark. And I would agree with you. I think that's one of the challenges because I think a lot of managers, senior managers, are intimidated with the details, and they just kind of want a quick fix. They, if you can, if it sounds good. The kind of this con man thing, which unfortunately is very in vogue at the moment. If you can tell BS, then you can. It's easier to get people's attention than if you tell them the truth.
Yeah, I just want to point out, you really touched on something there. It's management's lack of trust. So our message is let the teams make choices. They're smart people. Give them a menu. We say this works in this situation, this works in other situations. We actually help them make your decisions, better outcomes. Yeah. But it boils down to management's trust that they're going to make good choices based on that. Compare that to, let's say, SAVE, where you will do exactly what this framework says. Yeah. That works well for managers. Okay, put my people in a box, follow the recipe, and we'll be successful. I'll get promoted and make my bonus. So that's kind of fundamental. Is a lot of managers. John Smart at Barclays trusted the teams because he didn't